All right, my guest this week is someone I've been wanting to have on for quite some time. I think he's one of the best special teams coaches in the league. And with a lot of the changes going on with the rules and special teams, which I think a lot of football fans haven't been paying much attention to and are going to be shocked when the season starts. Like, wait a second, what's going on? I wanted to bring on special teams guru and a guy who I think is going to be a head coach in the NFL. Raymond Bubba Ventrone. He is the assistant head coach and special teams coordinator of the Cleveland Browns, and we're going to go through his career. But Bubba, what's up, my man?
What's going on, my man? Thank you so much for that intro. That's
Uh,
a heck of an introduction, and I appreciate it.
all right, so special teams coordinator. But for those at home who are like, all right, but what's his story? We'll go through it here. Undrafted as a Patriots player, 05, 06, then the Jets for 07. Then you jump back to the Patriots for 07, 08. Then you spent 4 years with the Browns, 2 years with the Niners. And then almost immediately after ending a career as a player, you end up coaching with the Patriots in their special teams room, then being the Colts special teams coordinator, which that's where we got to know each other. And I was blown
Yeah,
away by your work during the Hard Knocks in season with the Colts, where you were,
yeah.
I think, the MVP. And then for the last couple of years, the Browns special teams coordinator. You're a Super Bowl champion and you're an undrafted guy out of Villanova. Do you look at yourself as former player, or do you look at yourself now as current coach? Like, what's the dichotomy in your brain?
I think I take a little bit from both. I do. I think I take a little bit from both, and I had to work for all of my opportunities, and I'm very thankful for all those opportunities I was given, and in both as a player and as a coach by Bill Belichick. So that's pretty cool to say. But no, I feel like I worked for every opportunity I got, and I put myself in a good position moving into this, 2024 season.
Undrafted guy out of Villanova. And as the story goes, I'm doing my research. There was a chance they were going to draft you as Mr. Irrelevant the year you got drafted. They don't. You sign as an undrafted free agent. I could see the way you play, and you were a fearless player, and you're a special teams guru. I can imagine you were one of Belichick's favorites. What was the dynamic there between you and Coach Bill Belichick?
No, he was awesome, and he knew that I was going to play as hard as I could every single play, and that's ultimately how I made it. I was a practice squad player for my first year in the league, and then they actually sent me to, and I was playing running back, receiver, corner, safety in practice, taking every special teams rep. So I was playing both ways, taking every rep. They actually sent me to NFL Europe right after the season. I played over there for 10 weeks. I injured my shoulder and they put me on injured reserve for that '06 season. So I didn't really play until 2007. The
Wow.
Jets signed me and then they cut me after training camp and then I signed back to New England. So, you know, when I signed back to New England, Bill moved me to receiver.
Hmm.
So I actually played receiver for 2 years and backed up Welker in the slot. So, and the reason he did that was he was like, okay, you understand the defense. You know the defense. We could put you in on defense if we had to at the end of the game. But
Yep.
he knew that ultimately I was a special teams player. So I played running back in high school and I had some offers to the smaller schools to play running back. So I was playing running back and receiver. And he's like, listen, to give you more value, we're going to have you learn the receiver position. So I played receiver for the whole offseason, ended up making the roster and it really did. Gave me more value to the roster. And honestly, I learned a lot from him about roster management
Hmm.
because the value of having a guy that can know offense, defense, but ultimately is a teamer that gives you a guy. It's really like your sixth wide out at the game or your fifth wide out at the game, and also your fourth or fifth safety having that same role. And that's why Bill was so good. I mean, guys like Edelman, Troy Brown, those guys could play offense
Everything.
and
Yeah.
defense. That way you wouldn't have to play or carry an extra body. Like I know one more example I'll give you, like Patrick Chung. Like for us, Pat Chung, when I was coaching there, Pat could play nickel, he could play safety, so you didn't have to carry an extra DB. We could carry an extra special teamer to those games. So that really helped our roster out a lot.
The Niners era of your career is cool too, because you were in those Harbaugh teams that made a run in the playoffs a couple of years. Your thoughts on that team and that identity, and when you were on those 49ers squads that were led by Alex Smith, and of course Kaepernick gets the nod in that second season of his.
Yeah, Coach Harbaugh, I mean, the one thing he instilled was just toughness. I mean, those guys, and I understand that those guys in LA, I mean, he will make those guys work, work, work. I mean, we practice long, we practice hard. We would two spot pretty much every team drill. So we were like getting double reps. You know, he was big on conditioning, and ultimately just that guy is he is a work man. Yeah. He's a great
Go
football
through
coach.
that
And I still have a
roster,
good
that
relationship with
Niners
him.
roster, Bubba, because I feel like it's one of those teams that didn't win the chip. So everyone's like, all right, we think of that era, we think of Patriots, you think of the Colts of those era. Like that Niners team that went to the Super Bowl and those and the year before the NFC championship game under like talking Justin Smith,
Yeah.
Alden Smith, like go through some of those names that you would just see like these are just beasts.
So I came in 13 was my first year there. So it was the year after they lost the Super Bowl. But it was
Yeah,
still a lot of carryover.
totally.
The only guy that really wasn't there was Deshaun Goldson, the
Hmm.
safety. But up front we had Justin Smith, Alden Smith, Ray McDonald, Ahmad Brooks is a freak. Inside you had Pat Willis, Navarro Bowman as your backers. Navarro was like runner up for defensive player of the
Yeah,
year in 2013. Then on the perimeter you had Carlos Rogers, Terrell Brown, Dante Whitner. We drafted Eric Reed in the first round that year.
yeah, great
So
player.
like our defense was really, really good. And then offensively, obviously we had Cap, Frank Gore, you know, Anquan Bolden's probably one of the most underrated receivers in
No
NFL
doubt.
history. That dude was a playmaker. We had Vernon Davis who could stretch the field. We had a really, really good team. And we ended up playing and losing to Seattle in the NFC
One
Championship.
of the most physical games of all time.
And in the next year, right? So the next year was my last year playing. I had some injuries, and so was going to be done playing in 2014. And that's really how I got my coaching opportunity, was because the Seahawks were about to play the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So
Okay.
Bill reaches out to me because we had gone against Seattle a number of times, and because I knew their special teams, he was asking me questions about their kicking game,
All
their
right, so
personnel.
you weren't on staff for the Patriots and you weren't in the league. You were kind of in limbo, and he calls you and starts picking your brain the week of the Super Bowl. I love this, Bubba.
Yeah, I mean he's a coach is a good friend of mine. We text throughout the year, and we always had a good relationship. So at the end of the conversation, he's like, "Hey, not sure what your plans are, but Scotty O'Brien is going to retire. Joe Judge is going to be the coordinator. Would you want to interview for the assistant job?" And I had already had a house in Boston. My wife was from Boston, and that was kind of like our place to go back to, regardless of where I was playing. And the season ended. I think I interviewed that Thursday, and that interview process was intense. I mean, I was there at like 6 a.m. I didn't leave until like 7 p.m. And then he ended up offering me the position. And then he's like, "Yeah, if you want to come back tomorrow, and be ready to roll, that'd be great." And it was like Friday or something,
You're
like
like
6 o'clock.
tomorrow.
Yeah. But no, he's awesome.
The Colts gig, you finally get the special teams coordinator gig, and you're now one of the 32 in that role. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I get a call after the Super Bowl when we lost to Philly, and I was still the assistant in New England. And Frank Reich said, "Hey, there's a chance I might be getting this job in Indy." Sure enough, he gets the job. He calls me on Sunday night. We did a Zoom interview, and then I found out shortly after that I had earned the position, and it was crazy. Things happened so fast. So love my time in Indy. I really took everything I learned in New England and throughout my career and applied it to my own schemes and my own really beliefs and thoughts, I guess you would say. And had a lot of really good units, had coached, I think, three all pros down there: Luke Rhodes, Ashton Dolan, and George Odom.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm proud of that. We had really good units. We're in the top five mostly every year. So it was a really good experience. We had some good teams, and probably would have had even more success if we would have more consistency at the quarterback position. We just,
Totally.
Andrew retires, and then you have really a different starter each year for the next 4 years. So that was probably the most challenging part, was that finding that position.
And then you get the Browns job and you're with Stefanski and you're with Jim Schwartz and you guys have this miracle run this year after Watson goes down with the injury. What was it like second half of the season watching Joe Flacco throw this offense on its back and then the defense kind of do their job? And then of course on special teams, you guys carry the load as well.
Yeah, I mean, tons of credit to first off our general manager. Andrew Berry does an excellent job both putting together a roster which sets you up for success. Obviously, our personnel is really good. I feel like we have one of, if not the most balanced roster in the NFL. If you look at our offensive and defensive personnel paired with our specialists and returners, I think that we have one of, if not the best roster in the league. And then our head coach does a tremendous job of just managing everything. And then with the staff, like last year, we had a lot of injuries. We were kind of decimated to a degree.
Yeah.
And Schwartz, me, and AVP, Kevin, like those guys, we all just found a way to make it work. Bill Callahan was on that staff. He's an incredible coach. I know they had a number of injuries on the offensive line. I really look up to him. He's a big mentor of mine. I texted with him a couple weeks ago, but
I love that.
really love that guy, man. But no, I think in tons of credit to the players. I think when you get in a position, you have injuries throughout a season, and you are kind of decimated and you're looking for the next guy. It's how well can you prepare and train the players that aren't on the roster, right? That aren't on the 53 man, the guys that are on this practice squad. Because really, the practice squad is an extension of the roster. When you're looking to sign a guy, when a guy gets injured, you really want to be able to pull from that 16-man practice squad because those guys know your terminology, they know your scheme, they know what is expected, they know what the expectations are, rather than signing a guy off the street. So a lot goes into the development of those players, and that really goes back to like off-season program, training camp, and then
Preseason.
preseason, and then just
Like, we always say like preseason doesn't matter, just cut it to 2 games, but you better believe that third preseason game, that's where you find those guys.
no doubt, no doubt. And I think that our coaching staff, offense, defense, special teams, we did a good job of that last year because we did have to play a lot of those guys that weren't on the active roster.
Let me ask you about Flacco because now he's with the Colts, he's at your old place, but like I thought he was done. I saw him as a Jets quarter. It's going to be forgotten in like the history of NFL. We're not going to talk about Joe Flacco's 2024 season, 2023 season because you guys lost in the first round and it was whatever. I thought that was miraculous what he did off the street. It was incredible.
I kind of got chills a little bit right now, Peter. Just thinking about how he came into that situation. First off, the first day he comes in, he runs a RedZone 7-on-7 period, and a ball doesn't touch the ground. He
Is that
just
right?
he shreds our defense, like shreds our defense. And it was consistent when Joe was out there. He's accurate. He's got a big arm. I really like the guy. I think he's a locker room guy, and I think a lot of our guys gravitated towards him.
But not a rah-rah guy. Like I've known him his whole
Not at
career.
all.
He
Not
won't
at
say a
all.
word until you come up to him and engage. Like
Not at all. But I will say this though, like there's times where you could see the interactions between him and some of the receivers, like if they ran a wrong route or he expected them to be in a different spot, he would get after those guys.
good.
And they understood that. And those guys played hard for him, and our team kind of rallied around him and found a way to get into the playoffs.
Yeah. Last question on the roster. The Deshaun Watson, if you had obviously you're around the team now. Like, is there hope? Is there optimism? What's the feeling on Watson as the quarterback from your vantage point as one of the coaches? I'm sure everyone in the building is juiced that he's going to be back on the field. And then it's all right. Are we going to get the Deshaun that we knew when you were in Indy and he was in Houston, or are we getting just this question mark that we're not sure what he is right now?
First off, when he's going, he is really tough to stop. I know that firsthand whenever I was coaching in Indy. He was a headache to prepare for. He was a headache to prepare for. I feel like he is definitely trending to be back to that level. I think he looked really good. He threw a ball at the end of the last day of minicamp to Elijah. They almost connected on it, but he like had to buy time, scramble to his left, set his feet, and throw this ball. He probably threw the ball 60 yards. I
Yeah.
mean, on a dime too. I mean, and it is exciting to be able to see him get back and work hard to get back to that level. And I think our whole organization is excited for him to be back.
Fired up to see him. Okay. So there's these New special teams rules. Let's stick on the kickoffs here. Bubba, when the rules came out, it didn't even like lead Sports Center. It didn't lead Good Morning Football. It was kind of a blurb, like, oh yeah, there's been a rule that's been passed, and there's all these diagrams. And I kind of checked it out and was like, all right, I guess what everyone in the league has been texting me during OTAs and mandatory minicamps being like, why are you guys not talking about these special teams rule changes enough? It is going to be revolutionary. And it's also going to separate the great special teams units from the mediocre units. Take us through your knowledge of the rules when you got the news and what you've been doing in the lab. Not giving away any secrets, but what are some of the possibilities that can be done? Because I think a lot of listeners might not even know what the changes are.
Sure. So I would say first, I think everyone needs to understand like the returner value is going to go up tremendously because now I think that with the amount of balls that are going to be returned, that's just another opportunity for it's somewhat of an offensive play. So you need to have multiple returners as well. So how the kickoff play goes right now is the ball is still kicked from the -35. However, the kickoff team is aligned on the +40. You need to align with, and it's similar alignments to what they were in the past. You need to have two guys outside the numbers on each side, two guys in between the numbers in the hash, and then you had the fifth guy, so the L5 and R5 need to be in between the hashes. They can be anywhere in between the hashes. So they're already on the +40. The return unit, okay, there's a setup zone that's from the -35 to the -30. There's 9 guys in that area
In a 5 yard span.
in a 5 yard span. I won't
Okay.
get into all the alignments
No,
and
no, no,
stuff.
no. But I
So
get it.
there's
Like,
9 guys there. 7 of those guys have to be on the 35-yard line.
okay.
2 of those guys have to
Can be
be
roaming, whatever, in that
right, but
five
they
yard.
can't. Once the ball is kicked, nobody can move. So
Got it.
there's like a grace period of like them to get set. They're going to give you quote ample time to be aligned and be able to react to the kickoff unit. So you have 9 guys in that area. So that's the setup zone. The landing zone is from the -20, right? I'm sorry, from the +20 to the goal
Okay.
line, to
Okay.
the goal line. The ball, if the ball is kicked off, and the ball is kicked into the end zone in the air, and the returner catches it and takes a knee, it's a touchback, but the ball goes to the 30-yard line.
Okay.
So touchback goes to the 30. If a ball is kicked in the air, say the ball hits in the landing zone on the ground, hits the 15 and rolls into the end zone, and you take a knee, it's a touchback, but the ball goes to the 20-yard line.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right? If the ball falls short of the 20-yard line, if the ball's kicked and hits at the
22.
22-yard
Yeah.
line and goes into the setup or to the landing zone, it's a touchback, or I'm sorry, it's like the ball was kicked out of bounds. The ball goes to the 40-yard line.
Interesting. So you have to kick it to at least the 20 if
So
you're a
they're in.
kicking team.
So the thought process is, and it feels like they're trying to incentivize returns.
Yep.
So there's a lot of people that feel that some teams are going to try to get the ball on the ground because the kickoff unit and the kickoff return unit can't move until the ball hits the ground or the ball was touched.
You're frozen. You're not allowed to move. It's like a penalty. It's like
Right.
whatever. It's a holding, whatever it is, whatever the call will be. You cannot move. You have to be frozen until that ball hits the ground
Or is touched.
or
And
it's caught.
then
Yeah.
also every ball needs to be down. So like in the past, you'd see guys do like the iron cross
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
stand
yeah.
up and do the iron cross. You have to, every ball has to be possessed and taken a knee of if you want to have a touchback.
Okay.
So a lot of people think that, and I think there's some concern that the ball like teams are going to try to get the ball on the ground. Now look, so to kick a line drive or a soccer type style of kick, there's definitely some risk with that. Like we call it like a mishit ball.
Yeah.
Because if you don't hit the ball clean or hit the ball flush or aren't as accurate with the ball and it falls short
To the 40-yard line.
to the 40. But now you have and we're preparing for a soccer style kicker for week 1 and Brandon Aubrey in Dallas, soccer player, good control of the ball. I already read that he's working on these
I'm
types
sure
of
this is
kicks.
going to be the scouting reports. This guy's been working for 17 hours on
So
working on the
now
perfect kick. Yeah.
you have to prepare your returners to field some type of ball like that. And now the ball handling really is important in the back end because if you can't cover until the ball is touched or hits the ground, it's like now there's a lot of space between the kickoff team
Totally.
and the returner. So the ball hits the ground. Now the kickoff team can go, and now the ball's still not possessed. Like, you got to do a good job of being able to field that thing.
Okay, so is there an advantage to having like your number one and number two and number three wide receivers as your returners because they have the best hands? Because isn't that now going to be more important than anything, if especially if there's these squib kicks and these soccer balls?
I think that there's a chance that you're going to see that. I think that there's definitely going to be some element of, you're going to see punt return type schemes. You're also going to see some kick return type schemes. You're going to see different types of blocking. You're going to see, you're allowed to, like, right away, like when the ball is touched or hits the ground, you can go right at the kick. You can go right at the kickoff team. You don't have to
Yeah,
wait.
you
So,
could.
like,
Okay,
you're going to see like
you could
attack
blow them up.
blocks. You're going to see attack blocks. You're going to see some guys take a few yard drops. You're going to see a lot of different schemes like that. But I think there's really going to be a lot of value on the guys in the back end as a returner, because I think that there's definitely opportunity for those guys. I think you're also going to see on the kickoff side of it, you're going to see
Mm-hmm.
some different body types. You're going to see some different types of body types.
Let's talk about that because we had Justin Reed on 2 weeks ago from the Chiefs. It was because he won a chess championship amongst all the players in the NFL. He was the NFL's chess champion. I thought that was pretty interesting. So we're talking about it. A day later, Dave Taub, their special teams coach, comes out and says, we might have Justin do kickoffs because of the way it is. Like, you're going to need a tackler from the kicking spot. Like, your kicker has to be able to tackle if there's going to be all these returns. And if Justin can kick the ball 40 yards, we'd almost rather have him than Butker, who's our field goal kicker. But we might as well have 11 guys who can tackle. Have you guys tinkered with that idea that maybe there's a player on the team that can kick the ball and do a kickoff just fine, good enough in these new rules, and that maybe we want a non-kicker to be our kickoff specialist?
So 2 years ago, Butker got hurt at Arizona. In game, mid game, he got hurt, and Justin Reed came on. He kicked off and he kicked field goals and extra points for the rest of the game. I will say this: he's an excellent kicker. He has a soccer background, and the reason I know this because I know his older brother
Yeah,
Eric. I played with him in
sure.
San Fran, and he also played soccer. So those guys have a soccer background. I will say this though, like, you may see kickers make a few more tackles because if the ball is short and the returner can get up on that kickoff team quick, things can get loose. Like, and I don't want to get too much into like scheme and things like that, but you're also putting a non-professional kicker at that position.
Yep.
So, like, to me, there's definitely risk to putting a position player at that spot. And yeah, you could say it's easy to kick it to get the ball into the 20-yard line or to the 20-yard line, but there's always chance for a miss hit. There's weather conditions that play into effect. And then also, like, as a kicker, you use different muscles than you do as a position player. Like, you're gonna really have to train and kick off a lot of balls. I think that you're risking like types of
Real injury.
injuries
Yeah.
with those putting a
Yeah.
position player there, and especially a guy. I mean, Justin Reed's like a Pro Bowl caliber
A
like
legit
safety.
and like a captain on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some validity to it, and I think that there's, some advantage to having a position player at the kicker spot if he's that good. And maybe look, maybe Justin Reed is that good. I haven't seen it in person enough.
Yeah. Because I got to think this is like as much of a burden as it is to learn new rules. Like, this has to be 32 kids in a candy store, all you special teams coaches, about all the new creative and different ways. And you're watching UFL, I'm sure, and you're watching old XFL and Canadian Football League. Are you having a blast, like scheming up all possibilities of all new things with these new rules?
Yeah, and I think, as we get into training camp, you're going to see just a lot of, and I've been saying this throughout the whole spring, it's going to be a lot of trial and error, because once we get pads on, you're really going to see what you like as far as the concepts and the techniques, the schemes, everything that comes with it. Once you have pads on, you can only do so much when you don't have pads on, but we can gauge to this point right now the spacing, the timing. But I think the blocking techniques and those things you're going to see more, especially in the early part of training camp once you have pads on.
Is there a thought process of, you know what, this seems like this really is an advantage for the return team? Let's just boot the hell out of the ball and just give them a touchback every single time. Like, is there a philosophy in that now as well, where let's not even mess with this? Let's just kick the ball through the uprights every single time, and we'll start at the 30 and we'll call it a day.
I think honestly, everything depends on how confident and as the play evolves and as it goes along, how confident you feel in number one, your personnel, like the guys you're actually putting out there to tackle the return team. So how confident are you in the personnel? That's really going to dictate the play to me and how confident you are to put your players in a position to make a play, both on both sides of the ball. But I think you'll see more balls returned that are even kicked into the end zone. Now, just because the ball's kicked in the air into the end zone doesn't mean that it's going to be a touchback.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to put it all together. And then I'm like, all right, here's what I envision. And tell me if I'm wrong. There's a Thursday night game to start the season, Chiefs Ravens. There's going to be a couple people be like, whoa, new kickoff rules. Then there's the Friday game, Packers Eagles. Well, I think that Sunday there's going to be a slew of either mistakes or crazy like trick play, roll out the bag. We've been practicing this all summer. Let's give it a shot. Like, am I wrong that the story of week one Sunday is going to be the kickoff returns and there's going to be either a couple touchdowns or a couple giant gaffes and mistakes that we're looking at because teams have been trying to do something and they might not be able to execute it?
I think you're right on par with it. I do. I agree with you. And I think that in the early part of the season, you're going to see a lot of copycat. You know, you're going to see a lot of copycat, especially even in preseason. I think teams are going to show more than they normally would show in the past because everybody's still trying to come along and understand it and want to have the best way to be able to make plays. And I think that there's going to be a lot of that in the preseason.
Would you argue that this is the biggest window for special teams coordinators and special teams units to kind of stand out and say, hey, this is what we bring? Obviously, we see long field goals and we're like, oh, that kicker's great. Or we see a punter just, nail a bunch in the, within the 10-yard line. And we're like, all right, that punter's great. But now the unit and the kickoff return unit and the kickoff coverage, kickoff special teams coordinators who can kind of put up. Do you feel like this is your opportunity to kind of flex and showcase?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm excited for the opportunity. I really am for the play. I think for the game, I feel like, when I played and guys that played before me, the kickoff has always been an exciting play. And to be able to bring it back in some capacity, even if it is a little bit different than we've done in the past, it just first off, it gives more value to the returner. It gives more value to the back end roster players that are special teamers. I mean, that's how I made my living as a teamer. And I'm excited to be able to try to give back to those guys and hopefully make some big plays in the process. I really am excited for the opportunity to be, I guess what would you say like the first group to be able to do
Yeah.
it, all the guys that were taking part in it.
The inaugural class.
The inaugural
Until
class.
the NFL changes the rules in 12 months and says, we'll go back to the old rules. We'll see. It didn't work. All right, my last couple for you. I've long said and put your name out there for head coaching opportunities, and I think my respect for you and your units, but also the way you connect with the guys. If you've got other owners and GMs listening right now, like what would be, you think, not to promote yourself, but the value of a special teams coordinator? And we've seen Harbaugh obviously have great success as a head coach, but having a special teams coordinator be a head coach of an NFL team.
No, I mean, and let me just say this first too, because like I'm focused on doing my job, which is being the special teams coordinator for the Browns.
Totally.
You know, fortunately, they gave me the assistant head coach title, and Kevin gives me time to be able to speak in front of the team, which is great. Um, but for me, a special teams coordinator, he has a relationship and he coaches everyone on the roster at some point, in some way, shape, or form. Like I like being able to be a part of that because you have input in roster management, you have input in the in-game situations, you have input in guys that we sign. Um, there's a lot of things that factor into it. I was talking with my brother the other day. I'm like, it is surprising to me that you don't see special teams coordinators be or get opportunities to be head coaches because at the end of the day, there's not a lot of head coaches call the plays.
Yeah.
So, I have I have played defense in my history. I played safety. I played receiver, right? I know both sides of the ball well. I can manage a game. And in the same breath, it's like, as the head coach, you're managing the game, right? Do you
Totally.
understand the game? You're managing the game. You're in game
Clock
situations.
management, in-game
There's so
situations,
many things that
when you're
factor in.
throwing that flag. Yeah.
And I think like that, and I know for us, Kevin calls the plays, but Kevin also does a really good job of like if he didn't call the plays, he does a really good job of, I would say relaying a message to the team, leading, managing, me and Schwartz.
Mhm.
Also, now with Ken, I see Ken doing quite a bit on the offense now. But Kevin does a great job of building relationships with the players and creating an environment, a winning environment that everybody likes to come to work to be able to win. I think that's important. I think the relationship piece of it is huge. I think that that's definitely one of my strong suits and why I've had success. I'm going into my 20th season.
Damn.
So 10 as a player, going into my 10th as a coach. I'm really excited for the opportunity to be the special teams coordinator for the Browns. And, hopefully we can make a lot of noise this season.
Yeah. Last couple here. The roast of Brady made a lot of news. Then Brady gets his jersey retired and his number retired, a retirement ceremony in grand fashion this past week. Your best Tom Brady story, if you're in an elevator and someone says you played with Brady for all those years, what personifies him the most? Do you have a personal story that you share or that you could share?
I have a lot of Brady stories, but there's two that there's two that I like. So the one I was playing receiver. I was playing receiver and it was in like OTAs and he gave me like a signal. He gave me a signal and it's like you're like throwing a rock, like you're throwing a rock. So it was like 2 minute. So I was supposed to run this like 12 to 15 yard out. We used to call it like a rock out. And it was like a cover five beater, which is like 2 man. So he wanted me to run the rock and I ran the wrong route. And he
Yeah.
just like dog cussed me. He's like,
Yeah.
Bubba, what the are you doing?
Yeah.
So after practice, so I see him like, after he showered and in the locker, I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. And it was like, he like completely forgot about it. He's like, about what? I was like, I ran the wrong route in 2 minutes. He's like, oh, I don't care about like, that's fine. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
The,
so
the
I like
ability
that.
to turn it on the field and then turn it off when he
Yeah.
has
I
to.
mean,
Yeah.
and I
Fearless
really,
competitor.
yeah, Tom's the best. He's had obviously a ton of success in all those Super Bowls and just a great dude.
Do you
He was
think he'll
always
be a good broadcaster? Are you thinking that maybe it's not his fit? What do you think?
Did you watch the UFL game the other night?
I did. I saw clips. I thought he was amazing. He's breaking down plays on UFL.
He was out there for like I watched he was probably out there for like 5 minutes in total. I thought he did a solid job.
It was great. It
And I
was
think that
great.
the thing about him is he's not going to get like we're fortunate enough he's doing our game
I
against Dallas to
know. I
start.
know.
The thing about Tom is like he'll go back and watch himself and that little blurb and going into that opening week he'll be so prepared to talk about every player on both
But that
teams.
scares me. I don't want him to be so prepared on every player. Just see the game, talk the game. My biggest fear is that he comes in with a playbook of 600 things, and this is my sports media thing. And he's like, got to hit everything, and that's never good. Like I want you just to watch the game and tell me what you're seeing.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be so like I don't think he'll be too crazy with that stuff, but I think he'll do a really good job of understanding what we do offensively and defensively, what they do offensively and defensively, and in the kicking game, and he'll be able to like hit on it,
Yeah,
and he may even like call out like, hey, they like to do a lot of this on these downs, and you'll see
show
that stuff come
tendencies.
out.
Yeah,
Like yeah,
what?
similar to how like I know Romo did a good job of that when he first started too.
Yeah, yeah.
But no,
Uh,
Tom's great. Geez, I mean he gave me a lot of opportunity, so I'm thankful to him for sure.
all right, we're wrapping here, but real quick, show your shirt if you can. I love this. This is a Beavis and Butthead shirt that says "Welcome to the Dog Pound."
That's the dog
You
pound, yeah.
you are officially in off-season mode. Tell us what a special teams coordinator does on a random Tuesday in June after minicamp and before training camp.
Okay, so I'm originally from Pittsburgh,
Mm-hmm.
so all
Browns
my
fans, don't hold that against him.
look, I love Pittsburgh, grew up in Pittsburgh. However, I'm not a Steelers fan
Yep.
currently.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm a diehard Browns fan. I love the
Yes.
Browns, And when I played here, the rivalry, I love it. I do. I love it. And I love Cleveland. I love the city of Cleveland. Cleveland's got better food than Pittsburgh. That's a real thing. And I love the city of Cleveland. But today, so my wife and kids are still living in Indianapolis. So we drove up from Indianapolis to Pittsburgh
Okay.
and to see my immediate family, my mom and dad, my brother and sister and their families are here. I'm actually at my boys here, my boy's house, Andrew Fiorelli. How about that last name?
What's up, Fiorelli? Sounds like my Jersey pals.
We
Good.
call
All
him we
right.
call him Fig. And
Okay.
so we're going to Kennywood Park. So Kennywood Park is an
What's
amusement
that?
park. It's
Okay.
outside of Pittsburgh. It's in West Mifflin. It's like right outside the city.
We're talking roller coasters, bumper cars.
Roller
What do we
coaster.
got?
It's like the
Six
best
Flags ish.
Six Flags ish, but it's like the best amusement park in the world.
I
It's
love this.
unbelievable. Listen, there's classic roller coasters, there's
Okay.
rides, there's great games. The
Games.
food is excellent. My
Funnel
my
cake.
my
Funnel cake for days.
funnel cakes for days. They got the potato patch fries.
Yep.
Just just so many things for the kids to do. My son Major, my daughter Ella, you're gonna love this. One more
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my oldest daughter, Ava, is
Yep.
going to a Holy Cross women's lacrosse camp. Guess who's the head
Belichick. Belichick. Let's go.
Yes.
Belichick's daughter
Yes.
is the head coach at Holy Cross, right?
Yes.
Lacrosse.
So I'm trying to get that connection there. My daughter's a really good lacrosse. She was a freshman to start on the varsity in
Damn.
Zionsville. They took third in the state. But anyway,
Hell yeah.
shout out to my daughter Ava, who's actually
Love
playing
that.
in a tournament this weekend, also
No
in
days
New
off.
Jersey. No days off. No.
No days off. All right. So Kennywood today. You're with your
Yes.
boy. You're with your boys from high school. Is that who you're going with?
I'm going with my family, and then
Okay.
a couple of my buddies from around here are going.
Love it.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the life. That's it. Enjoy every single moment. Bubba, I appreciate you. You didn't have to do this. Took some time out of your vacation to jump on the podcast. I'm excited to see this Brown special teams unit out of the gates, running some trick and all sorts of wild plays out of the gates. Let's go. I so appreciate you. You've been a guy I've long been a fan of, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate you. Have a good summer, man.
All right, have an awesome offseason. All right, guys. Bubba Ventrone, Cleveland Browns assistant head coach and special teams coordinator. Thanks for joining the season.